guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. So last weekend I went to my first MilSim West event, my first airsoft event period, and I was making this video to show you and talked about some of my takeaways from the event, talk about some of the gear that could either make or break an event like that for you, and just some of my general impressions of the event overall. Any of the gear that I really liked, some of the stuff that I've been using for a while, anything that I really think is a good piece of equipment, I'll try to find a link for you and toss down below. So you can look down there and see any of the stuff that I would recommend at this point. But I'll get started with my sleep system. So while we were there, temperatures at night were getting down to the mid-20s, which was pretty darn chilly, especially from the area I'm from. So I took my 0 degree Slumberjack bag. I've had this bag probably for 10 or 12 years. It's a well-worn bag and it's served me pretty well. I think if I had any less bag than this, I would have been pretty darn cold, because if you have any experience, you know that if it says 0 degrees, that's like a survivability rating. You're definitely going to be pretty chilly if you actually got down to 0 degrees. So mid-20s in a 0 degree bag, I was right on the edge of comfort. It was still made for a chilly night, but it definitely was warm enough to where I got some decent sleep. Next item in my sleeping system, and this is a little bit newer edition, I've only taken this on 2 backpacking trips, is the Trazon. It's a inflatable pad. You blow in it to inflate it, and it has 2 chambers, so if one chamber goes flat, you have a second chamber there. It comes with a few little plugs inside, but the thing ends up being like 2 inches thick when fully inflated, and this alone has made camping so much more comfortable. It's fairly lightweight and small. I mean, it's not as small as some other things can be, but for a pad to sleep on when you're camping, this makes your nights a whole lot better, and I definitely have to recommend getting a good sleeping pad if you're going to be doing any backpacking, because it makes the entire trip so much better when you get a decent night's sleep. In the past, like for years, I never took a pillow whenever I was camping, just to save on weight and bulk, but it, for me at least, really improves how well I sleep. So now I take this really lightweight pillow, and sometimes I take a small fleece that's about the same size whenever it's folded up, and I exchange it for this pillow, and I have the fleece in case I get really cold. I can switch out. Instead of just having a pillow as a pillow, I have a fleece that I can wrap around myself and keep a little bit of extra warmth. But if I know I'm going to have enough warmth, I'll just take this pillow, because it makes, once again, you're sleeping a whole lot higher quality. I didn't end up using my shelter system for this event because I had a friend that I went with who brought a tent, so I just hopped in his tent with him and just used this to cover up our gear. But this is just a ripstop nylon tarp. It's a whole lot lighter than normal, Home Depot tarp would be, and it rolls up to be quite a bit more compact. So got it in this dark green color. It's pretty low profile. I tossed in some 550 cord and some stakes into the bag that the tarp came in, and this can make a pretty quick shelter for yourself without having to pack a whole tent. If you go to a MilSim West event, we were the only people there that actually brought a full tent. Everyone else brought a tarp, something like this. I think because it's lighter, easier to pack around, and plus the way they structure those games and stuff, you don't have a whole lot of time to set up a tent, and when you are setting up a tent, it's normally in the dark. So simpler is better, lighter weight's better. I didn't bring a tent this time. I don't know if my friend's gonna bring his tent if he goes again, but I think I'm gonna lean more towards this for my shelter solution backpacking, as long as it's in a time of year where there's not gonna be a bunch of bugs, versus a tent, as I think this will work pretty well, but I haven't got too much time using it yet. Additionally, in the sleep system, this was a requirement for the event I went to, was to have a waterproof sleeping bag cover, so I grabbed this one. This is a Miltech outer shell for your sleeping bag. I used it, but I'm not sold on it yet. So whenever I first started using this bivy cover, it seemed like it was great. It's like, oh man, I'm in my own shell. I mean, it's gonna completely keep me warm and dry, any rain or whatever that we get inside this shell. I almost don't need a tent. because I'm going to be completely protected inside of this with my sleeping bag inside of here. And the main problem I found was that this thing sweats a lot on the inside. Any of the moisture that would have came off your body would have gone through the sleeping bag and off into the atmosphere. It gets stuck inside of this. So I remember flipping this hood off of my face in the morning and just water physically dripping onto me. And we had to get up like 2 times during the night to do like hour-long shift watches around our camp. And getting in and out of it, it was pretty sucky having to come back to a cold, damp sleeping bag. It's one thing to have a cold sleeping bag, but whenever it's damp, it just sucks the heat out of you when you first get into it. So I don't know how much more I'm going to use this unless I just went really minimalist camping. I didn't take like a shelter at all, and I just wanted to have my sleeping bag inside of this and just lay out in the open. Sure, but I think if I'm going to have a tent, if I'm going to have a shelter, I probably won't be taking this bivy cover because of its bulk and its weight and the condensation issue. As far as clothes go, I had to meet MilSim West's dress code standard for the faction I was fighting for. I was fighting for the Russian militia. They have the most lenient dress code, but still you have to meet certain requirements. M81 BDU pants, thrifted these for like $6. They did great. I ended up wearing these the entire time. No issues there. I actually really liked them. They fit really well. I was happy to be able to find these at the thrift shop. In case I fell in the water or something and then those got all wet, I had just this random pair of flight deck pants that I sewed some knee pads into and shortened up the waist so they wouldn't be like the old 70s style on top of the hip pants. They'd be more modern fitting. But I didn't have to use these, so I never got a use out of them. Also have to have like the approved camo pattern or just a solid green shirt for your faction's uniform. I just thrifted a dark green button-up shirt, and that's what I wore the entire time, and it worked pretty well. Same thing with the jacket, had to be within the color code, so $10, grabbed this guy from a thrift shop also. It's a pretty nice jacket and it kept me pretty warm, but that's probably the more annoying part from these type of events is you can't use necessarily the exact gear you have. You got to go with gear that matches the faction's color type or a camo pattern. When it's cold, a beanie is really nice, even if you've got a helmet, because sleeping in a beanie really helps keep your head warm, keeps your entire body warm. If you're going to be sleeping in cold weather, I'd highly recommend packing a beanie, even if you don't plan to be wearing it during the day. It just helps keep your entire body warm because your head's the only part that's sticking out of the sleeping bag. I've had this Columbia packable rain jacket for about 5 years. It's not great. The water soaks through it pretty fast once it starts raining on you. It does a great job breaking the wind, but a heavy rain, it'll soak through fairly quickly. I need to look into getting a better rain jacket. Up next, I got my pack that I rucked around the entire time with. I got a Osprey Atmos 65. I found this guy off Marketplace for 140 bucks. Look around, you can normally find used gear, you don't have to buy stuff new, but Osprey packs are great. This is my first trip with this pack. Up until now I've been using like a frame pack from the 70s or 80s or something I found at a garage sale like 10 years ago and bought for $5. That pack worked good enough for me, but I had to keep on replacing the webbing because it was all dry rotting, and I decided finally I just need to get a better pack. And it was well worth it. Having a good pack makes a lot of a difference, the way you're able to carry your weight. It's within the color code. They say no bright colors on packs, so the restrictions are pretty open. Plus I wasn't going to buy a particular pack or a pack just for MilSim. It's a little bit annoying that it has this kind of shiny reflective-ish label right there, but the rest of it's pretty subdued. Like I said, I wasn't going to buy a specific camo pack for the event, but this one works great and it'll be great for all my other trips. In addition to that pack, I carried this little North Face Jester as a assault pack. I carried it right underneath the brain on that pack, fully loaded. We were hiking through the woods and we decided that we wanted to stop and try to make some moves on the other team. So they said, I'll just drop your packs and let's go. So I already had this guy packed up with the daily or the small things that I wanted my salt pack to have in it, mainly water and stuff like that. And I was able just to grab this right out from underneath the brain of my other pack and toss it on. Even though it was like 11 o'clock at night and it was already completely dark, I didn't have to go rummaging through other things. So pre-planning definitely helped me out right there to have this guy ready to go sitting flat on top of my other pack where it was ready to pull out. The only thing is that on this one it had all these like reflective surfaces. I covered them all up with duct tape before leaving just so it wouldn't hit that glint when you hit it with light or IR, but it was very reflective. Lots of guys didn't run assault packs, and I'm very happy that I did. For one, and the main reason, is that I had my hydration bladder inside there. I hadn't used the hydration bladder much before this trip, actually hardly at all really, but it's because, you know, I hate when you're walking along, you get that like hot water inside the tube, so it always feels like a little bit stale, always tastes a little bit plasticky when you're drinking out of it, so I always just prefer to drink out of a bottle. But I noticed for this type of stuff, whenever you're running around with a backpack on, you're carrying a rifle, it is a whole lot easier just to grab this tube and take some sips of water versus it is to pull out a water bottle. An Nalgene's big and heavy. The smaller plastic water bottles are really noisy. So this is definitely a win. I'll definitely be using these more often. This is just some random one I got off Amazon. I'll link this one below. But it's like 12 bucks. So very happy with this purchase. I'm very glad that I had this. This probably was one of the things that made the trip for me and made the trip a whole lot better, was just using those hydration packs versus having to use actual water bottles like I'd done on most of my backpacking trips in the past. Another thing that really makes the trip, and I've been impressed with this guy so far, is this little like $25 cook kit. I had my backpacking stove before and I just wanted to get some pots and stuff. It turns out this pot set came with its own even smaller stove, and it comes with its own striker. This thing is like unbranded, random China backpacking gear, but it has been on 2 trips with me now and it's held up pretty well. I mean, it still works great. The pots are just the right size. You got a smaller cup, you got a bigger cup for soup. You got the big fuel cans, not the little ones, but the big fuel cans fit in there perfect. It comes with some cheesy like fold up silverware, which I ditched, and inside this pouch that did hold the silverware, I just put some tin foil to either cook your food on or to make a little wind block for the burner, a couple of paper towels, and my little salt and pepper packet. But this thing packs away really nicely. It's not a jet boil, but I don't see the point in paying that much money for a jet boil. At least not for how often I use it. I probably go backpacking 2 to 3 times a year. So for 2 to 3 times a year, using this little cook kit is just right for me. And it's worked really well. For the price, I don't think you can beat it. I'll try to link this thing below also because I really liked it. So for my primary rifle, I set it up kind of the same way I have my actual AR set up. I've got my HLX. I was very happy to have a good quality white light. At nighttime, we pretty much stayed using night vision and IR the whole time, barely using any white light. The only time I used the white light was inside some buildings during the day. They had a big shoot house set up there that I was able to run around with and do some CQB type stuff. And having a good white light that could push past a lot of the ambient light coming through the windows and the dark back corners of this building was really nice. One point was I did ND this light, I think twice during the trip, and both times is because this, you have this big Streamlight pressure pad. I didn't take the time to do the mod, which video I'll link right here. You can come back and watch it afterwards, where we doctor these things up a little bit to where we don't hit them quite as easily when we don't want to. So without that mod, I noticed that, hey, that is something really important that I do need to make sure that I do on all my real guns, is doctor up these oversized tape switches. Thermal was definitely the biggest advantage I had during this. Lots of dudes had night vision, but it was a incredibly dark night. No moon, no cities nearby, intermittent cloud cover. It was like 5% illumination on both nights, so incredibly dark. You can barely see what we're walking with night vision on without using illumination, obviously, but we were able to spot the other team from far away with the thermal. It had me and one other guy who had thermal, and we're basically calling the shots for our team because we could see the other team and no one else could. One of the other dude, he walked up within 15 yards of the other team, and they had night vision on, and they didn't even see him until, and basically he shot him. But it's insane. Thermal is the way to go. If you don't have thermal, seriously look into it. This right here is one of the, if not the cheapest unit on the market. It's the AGM Rattler. It's the TS19 256. It's like $1,000. So for $1,000, you can get a thermal rifle scope that works. It doesn't have great resolution. No, it has like a 2.5 power base magnification. It works all right. I mean, you can get ID on targets out to like 150 yards. You can tell that something's hot, like person size, like 500 yards. It's a great advantage to have. And not to mention it's QD, so you can pop it off and you can have multiple zeros in there to where you can zero between multiple rifles. If you get anything out of this, if I got anything out of this experience, it's wow, I have a huge advantage with thermal even over having night vision. Night vision was okay, but thermal is what mattered. The rifle itself did pretty good. I don't do any airsoft other than this one trip, and I had played around in a house with some guys before, so I got pretty much the cheapest one that had decent reviews. Gosh, what's even the brand of it? Lancer, there we go. So anyways, this Lancer airsoft gun, it did fine. It did all right. It's shot at a kind of a low velocity, which might have been the gun's fault, and it might have been my battery's fault too. But it ran the entire time. I had a friend that had a very expensive rifle that for some reason just was shooting intermittently. It was just acting really finicky. This guy, cheap gun. It ran the whole time. Nothing fancy, except it just worked, and that's all I was asking it to do. I guess kind of coming off of the rifle is the batteries. The rifle came with the Lancer batteries, which were great, and they worked fine. I kind of was thinking, a battery's a battery for airsoft guns, so I went and got these cheap MilSim batteries off of Amazon, and don't waste your money. They died so fast, especially when it got cold. I used one of these the first night, and these batteries were worthless within like a couple hours, and we weren't even doing that much shooting. I put in the Lancer battery that came with the gun, and it lasted me the rest of the trip. And thankfully, because I had two of these and the one Lancer battery, and these ones didn't work. So if I ever recommend anything, I did the same thing with the Psionics a while back, because I got cheap batteries and they just didn't perform well. Spend money on good batteries, because without the batteries, your gear's not going to run right. So get good batteries. So I was able to use my normal belt for this game. One of the main things I wanted was to have a handgun that was pretty similar to my actual carry gun. I'll use it for dry fire practice and stuff later on. But I was able to find this Airsoft Glock 19 for like 60 bucks. This is not the blowback version, and it takes these wonky magazines, so you probably won't be able to do, or you won't be able to do realistic reloads and stuff with it. This one does take CO2 cartridges instead of the green gas, which was a benefit for me. I don't shoot it a whole lot, and I'd rather just have the simplicity of a CO2 cartridge versus having to mess with the green gas. Plus the green gas magazines are like 50 bucks a piece, and paying like 250 bucks for a airsoft gun Glock wasn't quite worth it for me. The extra mags for this are like 10 bucks a piece. I really like this guy. I didn't use it a whole lot during the game. I used it some when we were doing the close quarters stuff inside the building, and I think this is a really effective training tool. I really liked it. But one thing to note is that it does not, even though it's supposed to be like the same dimensions, it does not lock in the ALS system with the Safari Lands. It didn't matter because I had the hood on this holster, but you can just pull it out otherwise. So if you're going to try to put it in Safari Land, it helps to have the hood. Other than that, the belt overall worked. None of my homemade mag pouches let the speed loaders fall out, or my one spare mag. I was pretty happy with my belt setup overall. For a chest rig, I used my Ready Rig knockoff the entire time in this configuration, and it did what I wanted. One thing I noticed is that in the airsoft game, I only had 2 spare mags plus the one that's in the gun. I have one on my belt, one in the gun, and then one up here in the chest rig. So I've got a lot of pouches that are meant for magazines, and I'm only carrying 1 magazine up here. Sure, I could carry more magazines, but for this game, I didn't need them. I'm kind of wishing that I had more like admin type pouches on here versus just have all this magazine storage area. I tossed the Psionics down in one, I have some tape down inside that one. I had a water bottle down inside this one for a while, and then I tossed my gloves in there when I wasn't using it, jam trash down in there. But the only one I actually had that I kept most of the things in was this pocket over here on the side. Kept my notepad, batteries, lighter, headlamp, and my knife and multi-tool over there. And on this far side, I kept a real tourniquet, shears, and then 1 extra magazine for the pistol. And there's the MilSim West tourniquet for when you get shot. I used my E-Trex 401 the whole time, and it's nice to be able to mark your location for your camps, so you can always make sure you can get back to them. Mark where the parking lot's at, make sure you can always get back to that. It's a little bit difficult to navigate without having a map in conjunction to this. Like, this isn't its own standalone navigation tool unless you set everything up in Basecamp beforehand, because there's no maps loaded on here. It only shows your tracks. But it works well for what it does, and I always use it when we go hiking just for that reason, be able to make sure you can get back to where you've been before. Having a padded case for your night vision is pretty nice, because I only have it on my helmet at night, and I'm not running around with it during the day. So having a protective case to toss your night vision in while it's rattling around inside your backpack is something good to consider. The most useful thing that I found on my helmet is definitely this Princeton Tech light. Some other guys had helmet lights, but most of them only had the IR versions. This guy, you tap it once, it goes directly to red, which is what we use the entire time. And then if you tap it again, it'll go to blue, which I don't know why you would want blue for. But then if you tap it to red and then you hold down the button, then it gives you a pretty bright white light. And it's these 2 functions, the red and the white light, that I used extensively the whole time. Whenever the people are having to pull out handheld lights, or have really anemic helmet lights that use those little flat watch battery types, this guy uses a full-on AAA battery, and you get some decent brightness out of it, and it lasts a pretty long time. So other than that, my helmet did really well the whole time. I didn't use the strobe a single time. Peltors did great, they're fine. I didn't run comms because I wasn't in a leadership position at the game, so everyone else who's just like infantry doesn't get to run comms, which I was fine with. Just didn't have to mess with any of that. It's just, you know, the airsoft version of the Team Wendy helmet, and it's worked well for me for years. It's actually really comfortable. I was worried that wearing it for two days straight, I might get a little bit uncomfortable, but I had no comfort issues with this thing. So to wrap up, I'll just give you my general thoughts about airsoft for training. The thing you have to realize is that for 80% of the people there, it's just a game. And the thing is that it is just a game. And you need to keep that in mind whenever you show up to an airsoft event. Being in the gun community, we need to make sure that we come off as not a bunch of tough machismo dudes that show up to games that are meant for kids and teenagers and stuff, and try to make it overly serious. If you go to an airsoft event, keep it chill, have a fun time. I had some good conversations with some guys about gun culture and stuff, and basically be a good example of what gun culture is. Basically keep a humble attitude, be able to not get pissed off or annoyed whenever something unrealistic happens. Just kind of go with it. Sure, there's the aspects of it that aren't realistic at all. We're walking across a hilltop, like skylining ourselves. Obviously that's not good training. You wouldn't actually do that, but there's other aspects that you can glean a good experience from, like how often you get to walk around for 2 days straight with your pack and all your gear on yourself while you're being vigilant for the other team. Not too often. I mean, I go backpacking and stuff, but it's just the backpack. I carry my rifle around in the woods and stuff, but that's just my rifle and kit. Very, very seldom, this being the only time, have I been carrying full sustainment pack and my kit together, where I can really learn how things function well. One thing I learned is that no matter how much I walked around my house, and I thought that I was going to be able to carry my large pack and my gun belt at the same time and just have the pack right up over top of it, that's not realistic at all. That became super apparent just in the first day. I got like big blisters and stuff on my side where the pack waist strap was pinching between the gun belt, the top of the gun belt. So that was an unrealistic expectation, and it's nice to learn that kind of stuff in a game. I didn't have a overall great gaming experience, I guess, with it. The weather was kind of sucky, and that's not something that they can control, but as far as the gameplay itself, I was a little bit disappointed. I've heard a little bit better things about American MilSim. I might try one of their events out sometime, but not to discount the good things I got from this one. Had some good times with some friends, and that's what it's about, right? You learn a few things while you're there too, and you can call that a win. So, final take. Get airsoft gun, find some friends, go shoot each other. It's a fun game. You can use it as a little bit of training too. Don't take it too seriously if you're going to one of these matches with a bunch of other people, because it is their game and you don't want to show up and try to run the place, because then no one's attracted to the gun community at that point. They just all are annoyed by the machismo dudes who show up and try to take over their game. So go have some fun. If anything, I'll probably put you in your place. I know some people that are a little bit too gun happy, they might glorify combat a little bit too much, in my opinion, and I think this type of thing might check them a little bit. Like, hey, even if your kill to death ratio is like 2 to 1, like, hey, I'm shooting 2 dudes for every time I get shot, you're still getting shot a lot, and that can be pretty sobering if you put it into like a more realistic context. So if anything, I think it's pretty good for that, just keeping everything in perspective. I think it can be a pretty good training tool, and I had a good time, and I learned quite a few things from it. Let me know in the comments. I don't know how many of y'all play airsoft, but I'd be interested to know if y'all go to the big airsoft events, or if you go to the smaller ones like local skirmishes, teams. I really don't know a whole lot about it, but if you're into that kind of stuff, let me know what kind of stuff I should be doing, or what kind of stuff's cool, what kind of stuff's not, what's good, what's not. Alrighty, that's all I have. Have a good one.